Hi friends, I'm Anusha. In this video, I'm going to explain the last part of the shallow foundation, that is bearing capacity and theories. So in this video, the topic is covered by the location of depth of foundation, foundation loading, and very important of basic definitions in bearing capacity, and it is very important in 2 marks point of view, and Tedjaghi's method. First topic, depth of footings. The vertical distance between ground surface and the base of the footing is known as a depth of the footing. The depth of footing controls the ultimate bearing capacity and the settlement. While fixing the depth of the footing, some of the points should be considered. Those are nothing but depth of the soil top, frost depth, zone of soil volume change, adjacent footings and property lines, underground defects, water table and root holes. These are some of the points which should be considered while deciding the depth of the footing. First one, depth of the soil, topsoil. The footing should be located below the topsoil, consisting of organic matters which decompose in the soil. The topsoil should be removed over an area slightly larger than the footing. Second one, frost depth. The footing should be carried below the depth of this frost penetration. If the footing is located at an insufficient depth, it would be subjected to frost damage due to formation of ice lenses and frost heave. During the summer, thawing occurs from the top downwards and melted water is entrapped. To prevent the frost damage, the footing should be placed below the frost depth, which may be 1 meter or more in cold climatic conditions. Second one, zone of soil volume change. Some soil, especially clays, having high plasticity such as black cotton soil, undergoes excessive volume changes. Such soils shrink upon drying and swell upon wetting. The volume changes are generally greatest near the ground surface and decrease the increase in the depth. Large volume changes beneath a footing may cause alternate lifting and dropping. The footing should be placed below all strata that are subjected to large volume changes. Next one, adjacent footings and property lines. The footing should be located that no damage is done to the existing structures. The adjacent structures may be damaged by construction of a new footing due to vibrations and undermining or lowering the water table. The new footing may also impose additional load on the existing footings, which may cause settlement. The new footing should be placed at the same depth as old ones, and the sides of the excavation adjacent to the existing structure should be suitably supported. If the footings are placed at different levels, the slope of the line joining the two footings should not be steeper than 2 horizontal and to 1 vertical. Next, underground defects. The depth of the footing is also affected by the presence of underground defects such as falls, caves and mines. If there are man-made discontinuities such as sewer lines, water mains, underground cables, they should be shifted or footing relocated. Next one, root holes. If there are root holes or cavities which is caused by the burrowing of animals or worms, the footing should be placed below the such a zone of weakened soil. Next one, sloping ground. If the footing is located adjacent to sloping ground, the sloping ground surface should not encroach upon the frustum of bearing material under the footing, having sides making an angle of 30 degrees with the horizontal. Moreover, the minimum distance from the lowering of edge of the footing sloping ground surface should be 90 centimeters. In the diagram, we can see the two footings which is constructed in a sloping ground. The slope is measured as 1 vertical to 2 horizontal. Next, water table. The footing should be placed above the groundwater table as far as possible. The presence of groundwater within the soil immediately around the footing is undesirable, and it will reduce the bearing capacity of the soil, and there are so many difficulties are there during the construction. The waterproofing problems are also arise due to the dampness of in the construction site. Next one, foundation loadings. The foundation may be subjected to one or more of the different types of loads. Those loads are nothing but dead loads, live loads, wind loads, snow loads, earth pressure loads, water pressure, and earthquake loads. First one, dead loads. The dead loads include the weight of the materials permanently fixed to the structure, such as beams, floors, walls, columns, and fixed service equipments. The dead load can be calculated if sizes and types of the structural materials are known. And there is a problem in estimating the self weight of the structure, and the usual procedure to estimate and assume the self weight initially and structure is designed. The weight of the structure is then formed from the design dimensions and compared with the assumed weight. And second one is live loads. The live loads are the movable loads that are not permanently attached to the structure. These loads are applied during the part of its useful life. The loads due to the people, goods, furniture, equipment, machinery, etc. are the live loads. Next one, wind loads. Wind loads act on all exposed surfaces of the structure. These loads are depend upon the velocity of the wind and type of the structure. Like live loads, wind loads are also specified by the building codes. Next one, snow loads. Snow loads occur due to the accumulation of snow on roofs and exterior flat surfaces in the cold climates. The unit weight of the snow is usually taken as 1 kilonewton per meter cube. Next one, earth pressure loads. Earth pressure produce lateral force against the structure below the ground surface or fill the surface. The earth pressure is determined using the theories by different theories. The earth pressure theory is normally treated as a dead load. Next, water pressure. Water pressure is like a earth pressure. Water pressure also produces a lateral force against a structure which is below the water level. Water pressure may also cause an upward force on the bottom of the structure due to the uplift pressure. It must be counteracted by the dead load of the structure. And then structure must be in equilibrium condition. Next, final one is earthquake loads. The force due to the earthquake may act as a vertically, laterally or torsionally on a structure in any direction. The worst condition should be anticipated and the relevant code consulted. The earthquake load is usually assumed as a fraction of dead load depending upon the seismicity of the zone. And these are the different types of loading conditions which are there in every structure. So next one is different definitions, different type of definitions which are there in the bearing capacity calculations. So these definitions are very important for the 2 marks point of view. First one, ultimate bearing capacity. It is denoted by QU. So in the question or in the problem itself, they will give you one bearing capacity. It will name it as a QU. So it is nothing but the ultimate bearing capacity. The ultimate bearing capacity is the gross pressure at the base of the foundation at which the soil fails in shear. Next one, net ultimate bearing capacity. Net ultimate. So it is defined by QNU. QNU is equal to QU minus gamma dF. QU. So it is a ultimate bearing capacity minus unit weight into depth of the footing, depth of the foundation. So this type of formulas are very important. You have to remember all those formulas. It is the net increase in pressure at the base of the foundation that increases the shear failure of the soil. So if QNU can increase the bearing shear failure of the soil, it is equal to the gross pressure minus overburden pressure. Overburden pressure is nothing but unit weight of the foundation soil into depth of the foundation. On overall, it will known as a overburden pressure. Next one, net safe bearing capacity. So it is D, Q and S. N for net safe, N for net, S for safe, net safe. So QNS is equal to QNU by factor of safety, QNU. So if you want to calculate the QNS, you have to calculate QNU. It is related one. These formulas are relative to one each other. So QNS is equal to QNU by factor of safety. What is QNS? It is a net soil pressure which can be safely applied to the soil by considering only shear failure. It is obtained by dividing the net ultimate bearing capacity by some suitable factor of safety. So and overall it will factor of safety can be taken as 3. Next one, gross safe bearing capacity. Gross safe. So QS for gross safe. It is the maximum gross pressure which the soil can carry safely without shear failure. It is equal to the net safe bearing capacity plus overburden pressure. So net safe bearing capacity is equal to QNS plus gamma DF. QNS is nothing but QNU by factor of safety plus overburden pressure, that is equal to gamma DF. Gamma for unit weight of the soil which is in the foundation, which is present in the foundation level. DF is the depth of the foundation. Next one, net safe settlement pressure, QNP, net safe. QNP, it is the net pressure which the soil can carry without exceeding the allowable settlement. The maximum allowable settlement generally varies between 25 mm and 40 mm for individual footings. So I am repeating again. So they will give you one bearing capacity, that is nothing but ultimate bearing capacity. It is QU. So if you want to calculate the net ultimate bearing capacity, QNU is equal to, you should have QU minus gamma DF. Gamma DF is nothing but overburden pressure. Where is gamma is equal to unit weight of the foundation soil, DF is equal to depth of the foundation. Next one, QNS, net safe bearing capacity. Net safe bearing capacity is equal to QNU by factor of safety. Net QNU means QU minus gamma DF by factor of safety. Next one, gross safe bearing capacity. Gross safe bearing capacity is equal to QS. QS is equal to QNS plus gamma DF. Factor of safety, wherever it is taken as 3. Next one, net allowable bearing pressure, QNA. The net allowable bearing pressure is the net bearing pressure which can be used for design of foundations. QNA is equal to QNS, where QNA is equal to net safe bearing capacity. If QNP is greater than QNS, QNA is equal to QNP if Q net safe bearing capacity is greater than QNP. So by comparison itself we can find the net allowable bearing pressure. The net allowable bearing pressure is also known as allowable soil pressure or allowable bearing pressure or allowable bearing capacity. Next one, Terzaghi's bearing capacity theory. Terzaghi in 1943 gave a general theory for the bearing capacity of the soils under strip footing. So to making the strip footing bearing capacity theory, some assumptions should be remembered. Those assumptions are: the base of the footing is rough, the footing is laid at a shallow depth, that is, depth of the footing is less than or equal to width of the footing, the shear strength of the soil above the base of the footing is neglected, the soil above the base is replaced by uniform surcharge of overburden pressure, that is nothing but gamma DF. The load on the footing is vertical and is uniformly distributed. The footing is long and length to width ratio is infinite. The shear strength of the soil is governed by the Moore-Coulomb's equation. And these are the different type of the assumptions which should be remembered according to Terzaghi. So this is the Terzaghi's analysis of diagram. So So we can see here we have three zones. First zone, two zones, second zones of two parts, a third zone of two parts. Second zone is radial shear zone and the third zones are passive zones. Where DF is the depth of the footing, GS is the ground surface, gamma DF is overburden pressure. The soil in this wedge zone 1 remains in the state of elastic equilibrium. It behaves as if part of the footing itself. It is assumed that the angles of CAB. We can see in the first zone, angle of CAB and angle of CBA are equal to the angle of shearing resistance of phi dash of the soil. The sloping edges AC and BC of the soil wedge CBA bear against the radial shear zone CBD and CAF zone 2. Next, coming to third zone, two triangular zones are there, namely BDE and AFG are the Rankine passive zones, and overburden pressure of gamma DF acts as a surcharge load and Rankine passive zones. In third passive zone itself, an overburden pressure of gamma DF is acting from upward direction. We can see in the diagram itself, some forces are acting from downward direction and some forces are acting in the upward direction. So according to equilibrium conditions, by applying we can get the one equation. And what are those type of loads are? The downward forces are due to the load Q into QB, and the weight of the wedge is 1/4 gamma B square tan phi dash. The upward forces are the vertical components of the resultant passive pressure P of P and the cohesion C, acting along the inclined surfaces. As the resultant passive pressure is inclined at an angle of phi dash to the normal to the surface of the wedge, and it is a vertical surface. Therefore, from the equilibrium equation in the vertical direction, we can get 1/4 gamma B square tan phi plus QUB is equal to 2 into passive pressure plus 2 into cohesion C dash into Li into san phi dash. Where Li is the length of the inclined surface, that is the C of CB. Therefore, QB is equal to 2 into passive pressure plus BC dash tan phi minus 1/4 gamma B square tan phi dash. Here we can see P of P, passive pressure, can be resolved into three components. Three component, those nothing but component of P of P of gamma, which is produced by the weight of the shear zone B, C, D, E. And here the soil which is present in the shear zones is having cohesionless soil where C dash is equal to 0, and also we are neglecting the surcharge load of Q. So the second component is P of P of C, which is produced by the component of C dash of the soil. By assuming the soil is weightless, 0 weight, and neglecting the surcharge also, here also we are neglecting the surcharge. And third component is P of Q, which is produced by the surcharge, which is produced by the load. Assuming the soil is cohesionless, and weightless also. And the three components P of gamma, C and Q are obtained assuming the different surfaces of failures, although their respective failure surfaces are different from the actual failure surface, and we are neglecting the here surcharge also, and cohesionless and weightless also. So, but finally the passive pressure P of P is equal to sum of the three components. Those are nothing but P of gamma plus P of C plus P of Q. Gamma for unit weight, C for cohesion, Q for surcharge. So by in the above equation, in the equation number A, from the equation A, we are replacing P of P is equal to three components. P of P is equal to P of gamma, P of C, P of Q. So P of P is equal to three components, and here it is the derivation. P of gamma is equal to of gamma B square tan phi dash is equal to B into of into gamma B n gamma, and we are deriving here. Finally, we are getting Q is equal to C dash and C plus Q naught and Q plus is here 0.5 gamma B and gamma. And this is the final equation according to Terzaghi bearing capacity equation. Bearing capacity equation. The bearing capacity factors are NC, NQ, N gamma are the dimensional numbers, but depending upon the angle of shear resistance of the soil. So this is the final equation of bearing capacity of according to Terzaghi. Okay. Thank you.